A few years ago, I found myself in Denver Children's Hospital, where I was presenting to a room of people who I thought were hospital clinicians and associated staff. And it is there that I met Deahna Visscher, whose story brought home to me the importance of the technology that NGPod Global has produced. I'm Stephen Thorpe, founder and chair of NGPod Global. NGPod Global was formed to develop the technology that today is NGPod.
My name is Deahna Visscher, and I am a patient safety advocate in Colorado, United States. I've been put in the unfortunate position of becoming a patient safety advocate because my son Grant passed away. Grant was born, he had had surgery, and eventually during his care they determined that he needed to have his nutrients come through a feeding tube. The first one they did it under x-ray. A couple days later, the nurse that was on duty wasn't comfortable with that feeding tube style and wanted to switch it out, and got permission from the doctors to do so. And when she was putting it in, she struggled every time they fed him, and all day long they tried different things to help him, but never once did they check his NG tube placement. And later that night, he struggled to the point where he passed away before my eyes, and I watched 20 staff members try to resuscitate him to no avail. And I remember begging the doctors to keep trying, because I couldn't believe that my son, who was doing so well and was supposed to be going home in a couple days, had just died in front of me. They believed that he died because the feeding tube had gone into his lungs instead of his stomach. And if they had had a device like yours, my son would be alive today. Now a patient advocate, trying to make sure that nobody else suffers the trauma that we did. There was a time when I was at the hospital and they were implementing a new safety protocol training. And so we were making rounds, and I remember seeing a patient on a feeding tube. It was an infant. And so I asked the nurse some very leading questions. She had no idea who I was or what my story was. Just knew I was someone that was with the staff. When I asked her these leading questions about the feeding tube that was placed, she finally responded and said, well, we do this because 5 years ago, there was a child that had died because the feeding tube was misplaced. And we do this so that his death is not in vain. And I looked at her and I told her, thank you for telling my story back to me. That's my son that you're telling me, and you're letting me know that his story does have an impact and is an explanation for the change and why these tools are needed. I was invited to go to the hospital where my son had passed away to hear about a new device that was going to be innovative in saving lives of patients that use feeding tubes. I came to the hospital, sat with a couple nurses and the chief medical officer, and you came in and presented your product. And I did say, well, I am a mother who has lost her child because a feeding tube was misplaced by a nurse. And when Grant died, it was preventable. There are going to be people that are using this tool that you have created so that there are no more children or adults that are passing away because of a failure with the feeding tube placement. Your tool is saving lives.